Hey, everybody, we did it. This is episode 200 of the D6 podcast.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough, and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 podcast. Here's your hosts, Ron Hunter and Jeremy Lee.
This is the family ministry podcast that helps you connect the church and home. Ron, congratulations, sir. We're here. 200. It's like running a marathon and crossing the finish line, even though we're not finished.
That's right. I've got fireworks going off on my phone right now.
Confetti cannons going off.
Balloons.
Y'all can't see it. Smoke machines.
It is, yes. We're having a party.
None of that's happening, and I feel sad about that because we should be having all these moments, but what a big deal. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to D6 because, you know, there are a ton of ministry podcasts out there, but not as many have been able to last 200 episodes and more. So congratulations to you guys.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks to our listeners.
That's
we wouldn't be
right.
doing this if they weren't listening.
That's exactly right.
Hey, today we have Jim Wideman with us. We talked about this last episode, that this is just a children's ministry guru and legend. And you know what? Those titles are deserving. We're not just throwing those around. This guy has earned those titles for sure, full of wisdom.
And one of his titles that he now loves to toss around, and it's not one of those bragging and one of those where we put it on business cards and so forth, but it's one of those where you pull out your phones and show a lot of pictures, is Grandpa.
And that's what he's going to be talking about today. He's kind of entered he's joined a couple of the folks out there that have just made this one of the specialties that he'll discuss, which is how can we connect to grandparents. And so you'll hear a little bit about that today. But before we get too far into that subject, you've got a reminder for us, those who are interested in attending the D6 conference. They need to pay attention to something that's coming up.
That's right. We've got a price break coming up March 5th. And if you register on or before March 5th, you're going to be able to save $100, and that's a big deal. And by the way, I always want to remind you, lead pastors get to come free if you have one other person register in your church and use the code at the end, Bring My Boss. And we did that beginning year 2 and 3 because we saw lead pastors were not attending with their teams. And the D6 conference is the place you bring your entire team of leaders. Whether they're paid staff or they're volunteers, we see people sitting around, strategizing, debriefing. One pastor shared with me last year that one certain session he was in the main stage was probably one of the most impactful moments of his entire life. I thought, and I know the person who said that. I know them very well, and that is incredible compliments coming from him. So this is a conference that you want to pray about who should come. Bring your entire team. Divide and conquer. We offer so many different breakouts, and we've got some incredible speakers. The theme this year is As You Go, taken from the Deuteronomy 6 passage, and we want to talk through practical areas of how do we have discipleship occurring every single day.
And one of the topics that you discuss at the D6 conference every year, you have tracks that kind of people can go through.
That's right. Student pastor or a children's ministry leader or preschool or special needs, lead pastor, worship, whatever it is. We last year we had 17 tracks that you could pick from, and we offered last year's schedule. We're not finalizing this year yet, but we offered 6 or 7 breakouts in those 7 tracks, and you get to pick and choose.
And one of the areas that you cover consistently within that is grandparenting.
We do cover grandparenting, and So if you want to get a taste of what that's like, you're going to need to listen to Jim Wideman this morning.
And I just want to let's stop for a second and talk about this grandparenting element of family ministry, because this has been around for a couple of years now. Larry Fowler, Josh Mulvihill, Jim Wideman.
Tim Kimmel has talked through this, yes.
And there's been events created around this, whole ministries created around this, and just I want your perspective on this. You are one of the names people would mention when they talk about the people who have moved forward, just the family ministry movement. But what I love is the family ministry movement has niched into its own little mini movements. Single and divorced families, step families, co-parenting, that whole area, and all the different things you just mentioned in those tracks. There's special needs and all of those different things. But this is kind of a new niche that has developed, and give us a kind of an update on that. As from your perspective, how's it going? Like, are we really starting to reach grandparents? Is this really working?
Yeah,
and kind of and because I want. My goal here before I launch you out is I think there might be a minister who might be hearing this for either it's new or newer to them, this idea of reaching grandparents. Help them kind of have a history of this niche.
Correct.
And then help them see how this is moving along and how they can be a part of it and why it's important.
Yeah, I think the initiative that has been championed by people like Larry Fowler and Josh Mulvihill and Tim Kimmel and Timothy Smith and all the ones that we've talked about is that we don't create yet another ministry that's a tribe to themselves. We're not talking seniors ministry here.
Yeah.
And that tends to be where the church leaned in the 90s and early 2000s is, we're arrived, we're retired, we're entitled, we paid our dues, we've got the T-shirt, now we're going to do the field trips and it's going to be about ourselves. There are a lot of seniors who are struggling with legacy, meaning have they done enough? Where are their family members at right now? And sometimes their family members may not be walking with Christ, and they're still praying through how they can connect. But I would say to them, while you're praying through your own family, look at the kids that are in your church that are not your biological children or grandchildren and say, how can you lean in and be a mentor, a grandparent, so to speak, to those kids? And that's what Larry Fowler, Josh Mulvihill, Tim Kimmel, and these are trying to say is you still have a lot to offer. You have a lot of wisdom. You have a lot of lessons from life. And the younger people in the church do want to hear from you. You're not the old fuddy-duddy or whatever label that people want to put on there. And so ministry leaders, if you can figure out how to connect the generations within your church, you will make your church healthier. And that's what the renewed emphasis. It's not grandparenting to grandparenting in and of itself. It's grandparenting within the body of Christ. We like to say generational discipleship. It's not about the next generation. It's about every generation. And that includes our oldest seniors.
And there are, I know that these leaders that we've been mentioning, they're helping grandparents unpack very real issues because it's multi-layered because they have to navigate the relationship with their adult child.
That's right.
And also build and grow a relationship with their grandchild. So there's where parenting, you're just kind of helping an adult build a relationship with their child.
Correct.
There's two layers in grandparenting when you kind of unpack that. So there's so much to talk about.
That's right.
And what you said about mentoring those and reinvesting in other generations within the church. So it's a rich topic. It's a untapped audience in your church that need to be inspired, that need to be offered something greater than themselves. Also, a wonderful resource for volunteers. When a lot of you are struggling for volunteers, well, you got people with time on their hands.
That's right. That's right.
And so, what a great subject. I hope this inspires some of you that might be listening to kind of rethink, what are we doing for grandparents? Is there a ministry opportunity within my setting? And when you're looking for folks to help guide that, Jim Wideman is going to be one of the places you need to go.
He is. Let me throw one more idea out to our lead pastors who are listening. You know the grandparents and the seniors in your church, and as you get to know their personal story, Imagine sharing their personal story on the main stage in your church in an interview setting for 5 to 7 minutes or 3 to 4 minutes. Talk to them and say, hey, what price did you pay for your first home? What did you do on the first date when you met your wife? And you begin to tell those stories, and when they come alive on that stage telling that story, they become approachable when they're just walking around in the church, and all of a sudden now they can have a chance to lean into other people's lives. So just once a quarter, once every other month, bring one up on stage and just interview them and bring out that teachable moment. Be a Jeremy for a moment. Just tell that story in the form of an interview. Think through your questions.
And it's so rich for younger parents to watch someone who has not just been there, done that, but they've been there and survived that.
That's right.
And they can live to tell the story.
That's right.
Their mistakes and their successes. And that is in its own form of discipleship and mentoring.
That's
okay.
right.
We could talk about this forever, but it's Jim's turn to talk about this.
Let's jump in.
So after the break, we're going to talk with Jim Wideman, not just about grandparenting. He talks about time management. He talks about all of the different projects that he's working on. It's a great discussion. You'll enjoy it. After the break, we'll spend some time with Jim Wideman. We're going to begin this podcast with a rule. I don't usually put out rules, but after our guest was with us, Jim Wideman, last year, I've made a decision. The words "roll tide" are not allowed to be said. Now, you talk all the time about respecting authority.
I know.
And this is the one time I can claim that.
So I guess I can just say
Nope.
RTR. RTR.
And no talking bad about the Tennessee Vols.
No, I don't mind orange. I just don't want to mix blue with it.
Fair enough.
But we
joking
went to the
aside.
same college.
Well, yes, go Choctaws.
Go Choctaws, Mississippi College. We went to college together 40 years apart. So,
Go Choctaws. That's so great. Jim Wideman is considered a pioneer, one of the fathers of the family ministry movement. Now, how old do you have to be considered one of the fathers,
around at the beginning.
He is an orange strategist and thinker with over 40 years of hands-on experience in the local church. Jim currently serves as the family pastor at the Belonging Company in Nashville. Company?
It's like a troop. It's a company.
There you go.
It's millennials.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I don't mean to. I just thought we might have typoed that.
No,
we're good.
It's
the
Belonging
Company in Nashville, Tennessee. Jim and his wife have 2 daughters and 2 of the most handsome grandsons
They're gorgeous.
ever born, and an extensive guitar collection.
Well, I do like stringed instruments. I cannot lie.
It's so good to have you back.
It's so good to be here.
While you're here, you're leading a seminar on grandparenting
Yeah,
ministry.
already did.
Oh, you've already done it.
Yeah,
Well,
listen, everything on that list is past tense.
now we're going to talk about it. Now we can talk about what has already happened.
It's already happened.
I want some cliff notes.
The great thing is the church has a partner. And it was amazing to me, in the early years of children's ministry, where my background is, nobody really talked much about partnering with the church. We just said, hey, give us your kids and we'll teach them about the Lord. Y'all go to big church. And the family ministry movement came, and the whole idea of kids having a partner and teaching them about the Lord, the church and the home, was a brand new thing. But again, before Deuteronomy 6, it was Deuteronomy 4, which is the first time grandparents were mentioned. And that's the first time the whole concept of your children and their children. And so God's purpose in Deuteronomy 4:9 was to pass on faith to the next generation, not to say, my house, my rules. Isn't it crazy that grandparents are fine with there being 2 sets of rules for their grandkids, rather than come alongside their kids and partner to help those kids not only to understand the rules the parents have set up, but just passing faith from one generation to the next. And, I'm down to one living parent. Wow. My wife and I, my mom's the last one. And, every great-grandmother's house has all these pictures of old people that if they don't write who those people are, there'll be whole generations of people that don't know who they are. And what I wanted to do is come alongside and write the God story of my family. What did they do? How did they know the Lord? What did they do in the local church? Which ones had a call of God on their life? What did they do to bless the kingdom? And understanding that story, as well as looking in their Bibles and seeing what scriptures meant a lot to some of the people that came before. And, when both of my grandsons were born, it's crazy when you have kids, everybody's at the hospital waiting for the babies to be born, and nobody will move. You want him to go to the restroom or nothing because you're afraid you'll miss something. Mm-hmm. And as soon as the baby's born, all the people from out of town want to go get something to eat. They want to go see Nashville. They want to do all this stuff. And so I just sat there real quiet, and sure enough, everybody left but me and Yancey, and I got to babysit for the first time with both of them. And Yancey said, "Dad, I'm going to go take a shower, you babysit." I got to do that on both guys. And as soon as I did, I looked at him and said, "Has anybody told you about Jesus?" And I got to be the first person to tell my grandsons about Jesus. I got to tell them about their mama's God story, their daddy's God story. When the new baby was born, I got to tell him about his Bubba's God story and that he would have a God story. And I may have mentioned what football team we yell for, as well as some of those God story bits. But it was one of those things that, the whole role of telling stories and counting that God story, I think grandparents have forgotten that, every Jewish festival, every Jewish feast day can be summed up in remembering what the Lord did and teach it to your children. And, we have gone with the whole commercialization of all holidays rather than use that Thanksgiving time, talk about what we're thankful for. Talk about how God's been faithful to us throughout our family and just the longevity of God's goodness to us. And at Christmas, the best gifts and what we're believing God for in the new year and things to leave in the old year. And so we, as a family, have been intentional about coming alongside our kids. The one thing nobody told me about as a grandparent is just how fun it is to watch your kids be parents. And, I love my wife more because of how Yancey, such a good mother, and I know where she learned it. And you just appreciate that part. And so, the other thing, Jeremy, that's crazy is I'm realizing the family must need more support, because why would there be 4 grandparents and just 2 parents? And that support and passing faith as well as supporting the family, I know that my kids' marriages are stronger because we're there to babysit for them to have date nights. And every part of that is just important.
This is all so good, man.
It's fun. And God has a reason for everything he does. And it's amazing to me how Christians don't ever say, all right, I'm going to look in the Bible and see what that purpose and reason is. And for years, grandparents, for me, where children's ministry was 40, 45 years ago is kind of where grandparent ministry is now. It's just, there's never been a time there's more grandparents living on planet Earth. In the U.S. right now, there's 108.7 million people living in the U.S. that are 50 years old and above. So not only is there a place to connect with grandparents, but, like in Nashville, the unicorn is somebody who grew up in Nashville. And so we have at our church all these young families who are away from their family. And I have all these people, some don't have grandkids of their own, but we're establishing grand friends to partner with families. They need to be loved by another generation of folks, and they're able to be grandparents to people that don't have grandparents. And it's just a win-win to do ministry. And, everybody's wanting to know, what do you do with these old people? And so there's a lot of great things because, sitting around doing nothing is not biblical at any age.
I really respect the way your mind works, and I think it's really cool how you're applying your mind to this topic. Grandparents were kind of late to the family ministry party. They weren't invited right away, were they?
Well, marriage wasn't either, which is crazy to me that we would think that you could have a good family ministry without working on marriages.
True.
But, it was all about parents and all about churches. And then somebody said, what about marriages? And then we realized that we had to work on marriages, and now here's grandparents.
And I think that's fun for me because you think it makes me wonder what's next. And it's not that the family ministry thing is a static thing. It can evolve as well.
Yeah, and what's crazy is in America the average age of a first-time grandparent is down to 47.
I see.
And so, and most of those that are younger as grandkids also are responsible for they're raising their grandkids. And so I look at, just like we came alongside single adult ministry and single moms, just think about if we partnered with grandparents who are functioning as parents, and that's called skip generational parenting. We come alongside these guys, look at all the ministries we could do as a local church to provide for them and help them. They're on a limited income. You think they're making less money than they did when they had their kids, the first time, their families the first time. And so there's just so many ways that we could partner and bless. And some of the same car clinics and things we're doing for single mothers, we can do for grandparents raising their grandkids, taking them school shopping, to help with things and back to school, and so many ministries. And, as an old youth pastor, everybody's looking for things for youth and college age and even 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, and just helping older adults download apps, how to use FaceTime to be close to their grandkids that are away. And that's the other thing. This is the first time that grandparents who don't live near their kids or their grandkids can have a daily conversation where they actually see each other. My 3-year-old grandson, he just don't understand why anybody doesn't use FaceTime. Every time you call, he's pushing the button, he cuts you off, trying to get you to look on FaceTime because he thinks makes perfect sense to me.
It makes perfect sense to me as well. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. We've got Jim Wideman with us. We're talking grandparenting, but then we're going to move a little bit to time management next. So after the break, we'll be back with Jim Wideman. Hey, Ron, we are enjoying our talk with Jim Wideman. We're going to get back to it in just a second, but Jim is an author, one of the contributors to a brand new resource you guys have put out called Recalibrate, an amazing book. Tell our listeners real quick about that.
Yeah, Recalibrate, the subtitle kind of says it all, a new measure for family ministry. Jim is one of 15 authors in 14 chapters. There's one chapter, 2 authors tackled together, but they hit the various lenses like grandparenting, like co-parenting, divorce and blended families, kids who come to church without parents, these odd topics as well as the traditional ones of parenting conversations. How do you staff for family ministry? Authors like Brian Haynes and Jim Putman. Christopher Ewan talks about prodigals. That's a powerful chapter in there. So just think through all the different areas and take a look at Recalibrate. Last year it released at our conference, and it was the #1 selling book by far of all conferences put together.
A holistic and creative approach to family ministry. You'll enjoy it. You can grab it at d6family.com. And now let's get back to our talk with Jim Wideman. We're back with Jim Wideman. Hey, listen, you've been talking to us about grandparenting. I love that. But you've also done some ministry coaching while you're at D6.
Yeah.
I've actually sat in your session before on time management. I know it's good. So I want to shift our conversation just a little bit and help us ministers who might be, there's a certain personality who, like, this comes natural to them. Then there's all of the rest of us who really need this help. So could you give us some of the tips that you're sharing on time management?
You know, the easiest thing to realize is everybody says they have priorities, but they don't always live by priorities, and they can't name priorities. And I like to walk people through just coming up with what is your priority. It'll really help your ministry to have a relationship with God. That's your first priority. And so everybody says that the Lord's their first personality, but if I took your calendar and I looked at you spending time with the Lord and those things, some of those appointments aren't there. My second priority is my family, my spouse, and then my kids, and now my grandkids. My third priority is my pastor's problems. I have no other problems when I solve my pastor's problems. And rather than just saying my fourth priority is ministry, to me, I put into the level of leadership under me and breaking down your priorities. And then you spend your time like it actually belonged to you by making appointments. Even people that aren't natural time managers, they keep their appointments. The problem is we don't sit down and make appointments by priority. And so I can't set a time to be with the Lord every day. My schedule won't let me, but I can have a floating to-do list on my to-do list, and I use Todoist because it sounds King James, and I went to good old Mississippi College, and but I have a floating to-do that says, before I go to bed, it comes up and it says, look at tomorrow, set an appointment to be with Jesus. And, if anybody wants to get with you, all you have to do is say, I already have an appointment. You don't have to say I have 10:30 with Jesus, because then they'll say, oh, come on, meet with me anyway. And because, ministers don't always encourage other ministers to do the right things. And so it's one of those things that I just have an appointment. I set aside time for, I have a date night. It's amazing to me how many couples don't do what they did to win their spouse's affection. I still call my wife, ask her out on a date. I still make a plan for the evening. I still take baths before that evening. I don't put on as much cologne as I did in college. But again, you look at just having a date night, making time with your kids, and spending time. I still spend time with my girls together as well as separate, and we just start making appointments for things that are important and walking out that. So my book, Beat the Clock, is one that a lot of people have used, and it's something that'll help. But to me, time management is just it's the batarang and Batman's, there's one tool Batman goes to more. He don't always use the shark spray, but he always goes to the batarang.
True.
And that's the way time management is for me, is just if people would start acting like their time belonged to them. And then now I'm blocking off time. I am blocking off 4 nights out of 7 to be with my family. The church cannot have every night of the week and every day. I give my church 5 days and 3 nights, and that's the most. And so we block off time for things that we need to do and just start acting like time belongs to you.
I love that. So you've always got something going on. I know you well enough, and I want to make sure you have room to share with us the latest thing going on in your head. What project are you working on right now?
I'm working on some apps and things that I think it's amazing to me that we're still, all these years, we're trying to come up with what do you do with kids at a small group. We hadn't solved it. And so I believe there's there's some apps and things that need to be developed. We're working on some ways to follow up and get parents on board, reviewing what's happening on the weekend. But grandparenting, I'm working on a couple of books on parenting over the long haul, as well as working on grandparent stuff. And so been doing a lot of writing and working on that. I just finished helping the King's University at Gateway in Dallas come up with a children's ministry certification program. And so there's 5 online classes that'll be a part of that. You can go to churched.com. Looks like churched, but they paid a lot for that name. And you can go there and look at that. It's going to be great. And so to me, just more legacy type projects I'm working on. And there's a lot of people I know that work on the church they have, but where the fruit comes is working on the one you want to have. And that's also looking at the future of children's and family ministry, not just what's hot now, but what needs to be invented that isn't invented to help us go to that next place.
I respect you so much, and I know when I ask that question, good stuff's about to happen, because something's always going on with you, Mr. Jim Wideman. Thank you for being with us. It is an honor to have you on the D6 podcast.
It's great to be here.
All right, our thanks go to Jim Wideman. Our thanks go to you, our listeners, for letting us get to 200 episodes. And you know what? Let's go ahead and begin the next 100 next week. What do you say?
That's right. We got Pam Tebow that you had a chance to interview as she was a speaker at the D6 conference. Tell us what to anticipate.
You can anticipate wisdom from a mom who has raised children all the way from being on the national platform, Tim Tebow, to being just amazing ministry and parents. She has done a little bit of all of it. So you will enjoy our time with Pam Tebow. I promise she's great. We will talk to her next week. And until then, I hope you have a great week of ministry.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.